மறக்காம சர்ப்ரைஸ் பண்ணுங்க. Thank you.
Meaning, but rook takes b7 makes the draw here because there's nothing better to do than repeat moves. If this king goes to the c file, then there's rook c7 followed by rook to c1. So it's, the game ends in perpetual here. So quite a entertaining line. As I said, quite forcing as well. Let's go all the way back here to this position. Bishop takes f3, takes. Okay, obviously white should white is I believe down a pawn. So like king d1, king d7 for example, followed by knight c6 is no problem. So yeah, knight c7, king d7, knight takes a8, bishop c2, and the plan here is of course just knight c6, e6 develop, and then keep this knight trapped. So that's why white has to play energetically. Bishop d2, getting ready to put this rook on c1, knight c6, d3 preventing that, h4 again. Got to play rook h3 here. Got a very creative idea that the computer here sees instantly, of course. e6, so black needs to put this knight in d5 to keep that knight in a8 trapped, and at the same time block this d file. b4, again, you got to play aggressively, play d5, try to infiltrate on c7. And again, these moves, if you go through them one by one, you can see both sides just need to play very energetically, because if black wavers, then white's activity is going to be quite strong, and if white hesitates, then he's just going to lose that knight in a8. But this is quite a beautiful game that occurred. Of course, probably both players had already analyzed all of this at home here, and of course, that bishop a5, bishop f6, and arrived at this perpetual. So that's the way to play if you're just memorizing some stuff and making a draw. And there have been games here where if white deviates, he actually loses. So if someone gets too creative, or if someone's memory fails, then you can win the game or lose the game if that happens to you. But that's a variation that's important to cover. But recently there's been another move that has been sort of not in the limelight, because this is a pretty rare position in general, but a move that black players have been venturing more and more. I've noticed some grandmasters started playing this way to generate winning chances. The move queen a5, so just saying, all right, I'm not going for that endgame, instead going for this middle game position. So here, white has two options: either queen takes d4 immediately, or bishop b5 check. They could transpose, but they do give us extra options depending on which one black chooses. Rather, white chooses here. Queen takes d4 is a little bit less accurate because it gives us more choices. Bishop f3 takes, knight c6, bishop to b5. Now e6 is going to transpose to what we're going to look at via another move order. But here there's a very interesting game where black took on d5, knight takes, and then the resulting endgame, of course, white has very poor pawn structure here, but is better developed and has some queenside initiative. So this was an interesting game to see. e6, knight b5, and now rook d8 was a nice move. Black doesn't care about that pawn on a7, he just wants to get his pieces out. White took it, rook d5, f4, bishop c5, bishop e3, g5, playing very energetically here, and down a pawn, but now obviously targeting white's weaknesses. And the position, I've analyzed the game a little bit on the PGNs, was very, very interesting here, because white played this move, knight b5, bishop b4, knight c3, and I say it's interesting because the rising endgame here, after knight e7, of course, black is still down a pawn in this position, but of course he's better developed, more activity, and this knight is going to be quite powerful here, all these beautiful squares for it to go to. And it's just very instructive for me to see how black did not panic at all in this position, just calmly played this endgame and relied on the activity of his pieces. After rook d1, just played king d7, getting the king out, getting ready to bring that h8 rook into action here. And in this position, it may be a surprise, but black has actually ended up winning this game, despite the fact that he's down a pawn, just owning to the fact that the knight is so strong on all these light squares, and so is the king, and the rook can easily become activated. So I put this game in the PGN, which is a cool game to look at in my opinion. So yeah, again, this queen takes d4 move order is a little bit inaccurate because we get the option of going into this endgame after queen takes b5. But instead, I believe white should play the immediate bishop b5 check, and now after knight c6, he can take, queen takes d4, bishop takes f3, takes an f3 and e6, and it's quite an interesting unbalanced middle game position. Both sides have a damaged pawn structure. Of course, white has these double f pawns rather, and of course we have that weak c6 pawn, weak a7 pawn. But another thing interesting about this position is that while white is clearly ahead in development for now, it's going to take us some time to unravel these pieces. And also white has this trump on e5, which is giving him a lot of space. But we are able to go for this idea of knight e7, knight f5, knight d5, or knight f5. So we got some beautiful outposts for our pieces. But we do have to watch out for white playing for this d6 move. So basically both sides have a lot of advantages and disadvantages to their position. So it's a rich game. And one excerpt I can show here is bishop e3, knight e7, castle. So this is very natural play. White develops, white's playing for checkmate. Now knight d5 immediately is possible here, but after queen c4, white is going to be able to maybe generate some threats here. It's not so easy to defend this c6 pawn. So I like the immediate move, queen to c7, keeping the options open for this knight. Is going to go to f5, d5, or f5. So and the game proceeded here. White did play queen c4 to stop knight d5. Now came knight f5, so swinging the other way. And here's how the game continued. Knight b5, queen to b7. Knight goes to d4 here, rook b8, queen c2, and now black came up with a nice idea, knight e3. So getting rid of the strong knight for this bishop seems unusual, but the follow-up in mind was bishop c5, and now with all the minor pieces coming off the board, this king is able to quickly get to safety, and the game ended in a draw after rook d3 takes castles. But this position is quite fine for black. We got this rook ready to maybe go to d5, or to attack on this queen side. And black enjoys a fine game that ended up in a draw. So, yeah, this is this variation, queen a5. Again, that's the main line that I showed you, is after bishop b5, knight c6, captures this unbalanced middle game position where both sides have their strengths and weaknesses. But black has been doing okay here with that knight being able to establish itself in a powerful light square. And the other option is, of course, if there's the immediate queen d4, then we can take knight c6. And here e6 should transpose, but you can also take here. That's another option. So that covers c4, and that only leaves us looking at this move knight f3 here. And against knight f3, I really do recommend this move bishop g4, but this is actually a tricky move order issue. Here's the issue here. If white plays c4, then we just play c takes d4, and we're back to what we analyzed. Great. But for some players, this move d takes c5 may be a problem, because we have to go knight c6, and there's nothing wrong with this approach, but maybe some players don't want to play that knight c6 variation against d takes c5, but want to play e6, and yeah, I guess that could be a problem. But like I said, I really recommend you to learn both knight c6 and e6, and that would of course be a situation where this is useful, in order to give you a starting point if you don't want to for whatever reason play into this knight c6 line. Although bishop g4 is definitely the move that I recommend here. I think it's a good solution. You could try the move pawn takes d4, knight takes d4, e6. So it's like a French kind of position where the center has been exchanged early and white didn't recapture the pawn, but he does have a couple of tempi, and the way he usually takes advantage is to play c4, immediately provoke a crisis. And here I think bishop b4 is quite an interesting option, and after knight c3, knight e7, again I can leave this position to exploration. Black's plan is simply to castle, play knight c6 here, put pressure on the center, at some point maybe liquidate it. But again, yeah, I think this is an option to examine, but still I highly encourage you to make sure that you're able to play bishop g4 in this position, and that you are very flexible with your advanced repertoire. So that wraps up these deviations here. Of course, we spent some time on c3, which is very easy to meet, knight c6, followed by getting this bishop out. By the way, I can also mention if they go bishop e3 here, you can just go bishop f5, and then e6, and get the bishop out this way. Otherwise, if knight f3, then cd, bishop at g4, e6, queen b6, knight e7, knight f5. This is quite an accurate way to continue. But you can also gamble a little bit like I do and play bishop g4, banking on the fact they won't take on c5. But objectively, cd is of course stronger. We also looked at c4, which is quite an interesting line. We have a choice of after cd. Oh, by the way, if the queen ever takes on d4, we get a big initiative with knight c6. If there's knight f3, we go bishop g4, and in this variation, bishop f3 goes for this drawish line. Well, very complicated line that ends in a draw, rather, and queen a5 aims for this like really complicated middle game that can give you chances if you want to avoid that draw. And also knight f3, as I mentioned, can maybe provide a move order issue for some, but bishop g4 I think is a great solution here, provided that you are comfortable in these positions, which I hope you are. And if not, then you can explore this pawn takes d5 and then e6 French-style approach. So that concludes our deviations from the main line, d takes c5. And this is a chapter that should be useful for everyone who plays the c5 variation, of course. And Particularly, I would focus a little bit on the c3 move because it's disproportionately popular, like meaning that it shouldn't be popular as it is, considering it's not a good move. So hopefully you will be facing lots of these opponents who play this poor French line, and you'll be able to get quite a good position from the open.
மறக்காம சர்ப்ரைஸ் பண்ணுங்க. Thank you.